Everybody. Hello, Peter.
Good evening.
Okay. I'm going to call the September 25th meeting of the Upper Canada District School Board to order and ask that you all rise and join in the singing of our national anthem. Thank you, everyone. Director to proceed with roll call.
Trustee Buckland.
Present.
Trustee Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee McPherson. I know he's gonna be late arriving. Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Vice Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee McRae.
Present.
Chair Petersman.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
And Student Trustee Tyler Harpers.
Okay, any declaration, consent agenda items? Have a mover and a seconder, please. Trustee McMillan, Trustee Karkner. Everybody's in favor. Move on now to declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none, looking for a motion to move into committee of the whole. Trustee McRae, Trustee McAllister. Go ahead and vote. Okay. Brings us to our first item in our committee of the whole agenda, which is the first presentation of the Trustee Innovation Awards. This is a very special project that the board took on starting, I would say, 18 months ago? Looking at how we could, as a board, we really honor and encourage innovation at all levels of the organization. And to represent that importance that we place on innovation in our schools, in our administrative offices, we wanted to place a focus on it, and we were very pleased tonight to have the first presentation of the Trustee Innovation Awards. I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Trustee Karkner, who was the lead on this project, did all the coordinating, and at this point I really like to thank for doing that and putting all the effort into it. The plaque on the wall looks great out in the hallway, and the awards tonight are incredible. And I think we're going to honor some incredible people as well. So, Trustee Karkner, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Following the presentation, we will have I'll ask for a brief recess to do photos, which will last about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Petersma. I'd like to welcome our award winners tonight, and especially the cheering section that has come along for each and every one of you. It's nice to see our boardroom filled. It doesn't happen very often, but this is a great occasion, and it's a celebration, so we're very pleased to have all of you here tonight. We're very pleased to present the very first Trustee Innovation Awards, and the purpose being to recognize the innovation in teaching and work practices in our schools and workplaces, as Chair Petersma has explained to you. We wanted to honor those employees whose ideas make their students more interested in their learning and make our workplaces more efficient. Now I'm going to go right to the presentations because that's what you came for, not to listen to me chatter on. But I would like to say one thing, that Lisa Raymond, our trustee liaison, worked very hard on this with me, and I appreciate everything she has done on behalf of the trustees, so thank you, Lisa. So the awards this year are displayed behind me on the table, and they are much different than the usual award that you might have seen in the past. I want to caution you because these awards turned out to be much larger than I had planned, and they weigh quite a bit. So I'm glad to see that we have some strong people in our audience that can help with these on the way out. So, without any further ado, I'm going to call on Darlene Bradford-Leger from Russell Public School. The principal there, Stacey McCready, is at a conference and couldn't come home early enough to be at the meeting tonight, so she asked Darlene, one of the teachers there, to make the presentation to the educational assistant who's being honored tonight, Carrie McAdam. So Darlene and Carrie, would you please come forward, please?
Thank you, Carol. It's a pleasure seeing Carol once again. I used to teach with Carol at Pleasant Corners Public School. Carrie McAdam is an educational assistant at Russell Public School. And last year, I had the honor of working with Carrie for the last 2 years in my very busy grade 1-2 class with a lot of character students. And she was an exceptional EA, very patient, caring, fair, supportive, and believes that all students can succeed when given the proper tools. Carrie has extensive knowledge of how to use the iPad, and more importantly, she knows how to use the iPad to engage the students and use it as a useful tool when working with students with special needs. Carrie is able to put some of our neediest students at ease by creating social stories on the iPad. For an example, if we had an assembly at school, Carrie would create a social story using the Puppet Pals app, and she would actually use photos of the students in the classroom so they could relate to the story. In creating these social stories, Carrie prevents many issues from arising as she is being very proactive rather than reactive. In the year 2012, last fall, Carrie and a colleague, Darcy Kingsbury, delivered a presentation about incorporating iPads into the classrooms at the Small School Summit. These two ladies spent endless hours after school preparing for their presentation and did a fantastic job, as I witnessed. Also, we were very fortunate to have our parent council purchase 10 iPads for Russell Public School. Carrie has graciously taken on the responsibility of taking care of these iPads, example, loading, deleting apps, charging them, and troubleshooting. Most recently, Carrie helped with an iPad training session open to all staff at Russell Public School after school. Carrie not only showed the staff how to use the iPads, but also shared examples of which apps are beneficial to both primary and junior students. In closing, Russell Public School is very fortunate to have such a wonderful educational assistant such as Carrie, who goes far above and beyond her regular duties. She is indeed a super EA. Congratulations, Carrie.
Carrie, this is the award that you'll be taking home tonight, so we'll take it out later for you. Thank you very much, darling. Next, I'd like to call on Alex Dunn to come forward, and she is going to present two ladies who have worked together in a very innovative way, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. Heather Snyder and Tanya Mason are the recipients of the Trustee Innovation Award. Would you all come up, please?
It's an extreme honor. I wanted to thank all of the trustees and the board too, because it is a board that all of us love to work in, because innovation is so heavily supported. And then tonight, for the fact that innovation is recognized, I think is really significant to everyone. So thank you very much for thinking of this as an aim for the awards. When our board has a mission of all means all, Heather and Tanya have gone sort of above and beyond in order to operationalize this mission. And when they saw in their classrooms that all didn't quite mean all, meaning 100%, they developed with their teams some really innovative practices in terms of using technology pedagogy, and traditional teaching tools, and blended them all together to support all students, including those with special needs. But what was really exciting is their research. They did the first of its kind research anywhere in the world on interactive whiteboards and students with special needs. And not only just special needs, but in inclusive classroom communities. So I think that concept that necessary for some, good for all really rings true, because their work, in fact, we had a visitor, I remember, from a whole team from Rainbow District School Board, I believe, and they came with their director and the superintendent, and everyone came, and they thought they were coming for a special education program, and I distinctly remember them dropping their pens, right, girls, in the middle of the classroom, and said, this isn't something for special education, this is something for all students. And so anyway, they have this research that was that started here at Upper Canada, that Heather and Tanya have been such an integral part, has been replicated in Halton District School Board, London Catholic District School Board, and in the province of Alberta in control-based studies. Their work's been published in all kinds of journals, including Teaching Exceptional Children Plus, Closing the Gap Solutions. And in fact, Sheila Bennett invited Tanya and Heather to write the chapter on special education in Ontario schools. They wrote the technology chapter. And Heather was just telling me that her son, who's taking education, actually was asked to purchase that book as part of his program. And she said not to worry, she had an advance copy. Their work has actually been highlighted at more than 60 international events from Spain to England, Puerto Rico, Germany, in Canada, and the United States. So these girls have really been leaders in terms of, and really put Upper Canada on the map in terms of inclusion, and have had visitors from many different countries into their classrooms and into their schools to see what they've been up to. And I remember one of the girls from Berlin in Germany, when they've been working really hard to replicate what you see in Heather Snyder's classroom and what you see supported by Tanya. And they said, she said, what they're doing is changing the lives of students, not only with special skills, but all students and their families, to ensure all means all. So that, I think, really speaks volumes in terms of what these girls have been able to accomplish. And when I saw the Innovation Award, there are no two people that deserve it more than they do, and I'm so, so thrilled and honored to be standing up here with them.
These are your awards, but as I said, we'll take them out.
I'll get a few of them.
And last, and definitely not least, is our next recipient. We would ask Suzanne Morrison to come up, and Sarah Crawford to come forward, please, to present the award to Monique Cole from Toniata.
It's a good thing I brought someone who knows what they're doing. So I'll
You think I do?
Do I need to use this microphone, or can I speak loudly?
You need to
No,
use the microphone, please.
I want to reiterate the fact that I want to thank you for being able to nominate or to recognize innovation in our board. I also agree that we work in an environment that encourages us to take risks and to see what happens. And I just love the fact that I have a staff that says, what do you think? And I say, well, what's the worst that can happen? Let's try. And standing beside me is a person who took that and ran with it. It started about a year and a half ago. We had a particular student in my next class who just, you'd have to duct tape the child to get him to sit still. There was no hope at all of him being able to learn anything. And no matter how much fiddling he did, he still was able to understand what was happening in the class. And so Monique said, you know, if we could get some headphones, and maybe then, you know, he could block out some of the noise, that might help him. Absolutely. Let's get headphones. Got headphones. More kids then wanted headphones. Got more headphones. We now have 100 headphones at Toniata, and they are available to anybody. We don't pick and choose who gets headphones. The kids self-direct themselves. The next thing was impossible for this child to sit down. If I got him a standing desk, absolutely, we'll get him a standing desk. Standing desk gets put there. Guess what? Other kids want standing desks. can I get another standing desk? How many do you need? So standing desks. It didn't take very much time for Monique then, on a Saturday, I'm shopping. I had a thought. What if I took away the desks and gave the kids any opportunity they wanted to learn in any situation? There's lap desks at Walmart. They're only $5. What do you think? How many can I get? There's 6 left. Get them all. And you know what? We could take the legs off of all our desks, and we could have tennis balls, and they could kneel. I'll buy some pads, and the kids can kneel with their desks. So it didn't take very much time. She even had a plan for the transition. So this was probably about October of last year. And so she had the plan of how to transition, because she recognizes that some students like the desk and like the nice space, and that would have caused them stress to have that removed. So she even had the transition plan prepared to help them manage bins. It was amazing. People who were able to come and visit the classroom would have seen kids in various ways. We're going to have some videos actually from kids speaking about their experience in Monique's classroom. And I think the thing that was even a greater accomplishment is that Monique's colleagues saw what was happening, and it has transformed the classrooms in our school. And so, unfortunately, Monique is at home enjoying her time with her family this year, our loss, Toniata's loss, but she's still certainly her presence is still in our school when she even comes and volunteers, because she's just that type of person. But all of the things that she implemented last year in her class have been shared with other staff members, and we have the same situations happening in other rooms. So it has really been phenomenal. The person on my right here was actually the one who nominated her, because to me it was just what Monique does. I didn't even think of innovation. I thought of innovation as technology. I never even thought that innovation was changing the environment, but how innovative it was. So I thank Sarah Crawford for pointing out that, you know what, her child was in Monique's class, so she got to see firsthand how that affected her learning in such a positive way. So if I can bother you for a few more seconds, here's some from the mouths of babes.
At the small tables, because I like it there because I don't like laying down, because it kind of hurts my belly a lot, and that's all.
And you don't like to kneel or stand?
No.
So you just prefer sitting?
Yeah.
And do you always go to the same table?
Yep.
Okay.
So lying down, they get the opportunity to lie the carpet as well. So that was another option.
I usually stand or sit, but I usually stand because when we're sitting on like the carpet or in French, we usually sit down on the carpet, and so it gives me a chance to stretch my legs before I have to sit
And
down.
does that help you focus and learn?
Well, it helps me stretch out my legs so I'm not always tired and waking up my legs on the carpet.
Okay, thank you.
And she left the picture. She obviously walked away from that.
We tested these.
All right, so what do you prefer to do, Joe? Stand, kneel, or sit, or lie down, or what?
I usually lie down and kneel.
And why do you like that better?
It's because there's a lot of spots where you can lie down on the carpet when there's nothing there. Comfy. and it's comfy.
So you can spread out more? Is that why you like it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So again, thank you for having an opportunity to recognize some of our innovative staff in the school. Yeah, here you can see the kneeling desks, and it's
Yeah, Trustee McMillan's already asked. He wants a lying down desk. I can see a whole new boardroom. Thank you very much. All right, trustees, if I get a motion for a 10-minute recess, Trustee McMillan, Trustee McDonald, and to give us some time to get some pictures. So, be back for 5 after 7, please. Sure.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay. All right, well, the others will join us here in a minute. I want to thank everybody for being part of that. It was a good first go at it. We've got a high bar now for next year's winners as well. Our next item is an update on the Kemptville Public School incident. The investigation, the recommendation status is what we're getting tonight. So we had a report last late spring, and this is an update on the recommendations. Superintendent of School Effectiveness David Coombs will present. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Back in May, I presented recommendations that arose out of a investigation which I conducted. That investigation was a result of an incident which happened at Kemptville Public School, where 4-year-old Caden Mayer was left on the bus and was not discovered until lunchtime. And a phone call did not go home from the school, and there was a mistake made in the attendance procedures as well. And if you recall, there were 6 recommendations made, and tonight I'm going to give you our progress on all 6 recommendations. Lisa, are you going to put those up, or? I'm sorry, I was going to read off here. You know what? I'm going to get my laptop, if you don't mind, Mr.
Yep,
Chair.
sure, go ahead.
Make sure I have
Yeah.
Mr. Hobb just corrected me and said this is a Surface, this is not a laptop. So, thank you, Mr. Hobbs. The first recommendation, if you'll recall, trustees, was that a child check system be installed in 100% of Upper Canada school buses. At the time I wrote the report, about 60% of Upper Canada buses had the child check system. Very simply, the child check system is a buzzer system which is wired into the bus. And the bus driver, upon completing his or her run, must go back, hit the buzzer and before exiting the bus. If they don't hit the buzzer, then an alarm will sound. I can tell you, as of the first day of this school year, 100% of buses had the child check system installed. That was the first recommendation, and that has been completed. The second recommendation was that we continue to work with STAO to review bus safety, consider further improvements to aid drivers, including the installation of video cameras on buses by September of 2014. STAO has been a great partner in this investigation and following through on these recommendations. STAO has proposed video cameras being installed on buses by September 2014, and they are moving in that direction with all our 33 different bus providers in Eastern Ontario. They've also been very helpful in increasing the training for their drivers of child check system to ensure that our policies are well known, as well as reinforcing policies that are already in existence. Thirdly, that a standardized format for safe arrival protocols be reviewed and amended by September 1st, 2013. So we did conduct a formal review of those procedures for safe arrival attendance policies at schools in May and June and early July. Draft procedures were implemented in August, and the final procedures were passed at Strategic Council in September. Those procedures, just to give you a very brief overview, I think the gap which we saw, and we had some office administrators, principals, and vice principals sitting on this panel, was that there seemed to be, as long as you left a message, that was good enough for safe arrival. And the committee felt that wasn't good enough for safe arrival, that a live contact must be achieved, and that failing that, in some circumstances, the school would do everything in their power to make sure that that child was found, up to and including calling the police. And I can tell you, over the first 2 weeks of school, we have had 2 instances where the principal has actually gone out to the house in other instances where they have called 911 and said, we have a child, we cannot verify their whereabouts. In both cases, of course, the parent had simply forgotten to call the school, and there was a medical appointment or some such incident. I can tell you in both cases, at first the parents were very surprised that the police showed up at their door, and then very thankful that the school took that extra measure to ensure that their child was safe. Number 4, that the new family portal system, as it becomes operational this school year, be considered an augmentation to school-home communication. Not, of course, replacing the importance of speaking to an adult in the cases of explained absences. That is ongoing. The family portal system is currently in development with an expectation of a pilot sometime in 2014. We've been working with Mr. Hobbs and the IT department to ensure that parents have options in choosing how they wish to be contacted in certain situations. So I'm very encouraged by the progress of that, and I would expect that that will be ongoing well into 2014. The 5th recommendation was that the current practice of tracking and inputting methods be reviewed. We are in 2013, almost in 2014, and indeed there are apps that you can get and download to your iPad so that you can take attendance. You could take attendance on your iPad. Now, I must caution that some of these apps are not well reviewed right now, so we want to make sure that when we do select something, that we do have something that works for us, and that is not in addition to some of the problems that we have in getting that attendance from the classroom down to the office. But again, we have begun those conversations, and Mr. Hobbs and his IT department have been very helpful in that regard. The final and the 6th and final recommendation was that the procedures be clearly detailed in operational messaging, that there is a communication to principals and ongoing training and monitoring throughout the school year. And indeed, we did this in August at the Leadership Day. We reviewed safe arrival procedures in early September at a link meeting with all principals. And Monday, this coming Monday, we have a learning module with all our principals where, again, we will be emphasizing the safe arrival procedures and protocols, and we'll be giving principals the opportunity to talk amongst themselves in small groups and then bring any concerns or reflections on the first few weeks of schools with the new procedures. We are pleased that we are making progress in this regard, but I'm here to tell you that while that we have made progress, we're not done. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. This is the second meeting where we've dealt with a policy issue that the board has passed, and there has been a breakdown somewhere along the line in terms of the implementation of that policy. I guess my question is, what have we learned and what are we learning in terms of policies that are being passed by the board and expected to be implemented yet not completely implemented exactly the way we wanted them to be implemented? So what are we learning in this situation and in other situations? What are we learning so we can prevent this from happening and that the intent of the board is getting through to everyone?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It's a great question because I think perhaps the best learning from this has been we can never be complacent when it comes to our safety procedures. That constant review and monitoring is necessary. We also have to, I think the greatest learning also is that our communication has to continue to improve. And we have had, so for example, we've done numerous communications with our schools and our principals and our office administrators about these protocols. We can't take it for granted that they now have them and that they are implementing them. We have to go back and review them periodically. I can tell you that my counterpart in Safe Schools at the Toronto District School Board told me this summer that this incident and our recommendations spurred them on to do an extensive review of their own safe arrival policies. And so I think that that this was a wake-up call for a lot of boards, not just in Eastern Ontario, but across the province and indeed across the country.
Just to follow up through you, Chair. Do you see this, and I know you're speaking specifically about the policy that and the procedures that you're dealing with tonight, but there are many policies that we do pass at the board level. Do you see this the lessons that we are learning through this and other policies that have struggled a little bit in terms of implementation? Do you see the lessons we're learning as something that's going to benefit the system and be able to prevent these kind of things from happening in the future?
I believe so. One of the things I think we need to consider is how we communicate and what do we have at our disposal now to communicate more effectively. And if I can use an example, one of the things that came out of our meetings was that we needed to improve our communication with our parents. That really, if our parents are not buying in and calling the school in a timely manner, it puts the school in a lot of stress. One of the things we can do with our new ability to do video editing and to put out with UCTV and videos is to actually put out something to parents which would promote and explain the importance of that safe arrival policy and their role in it. I think simply setting the letter or doing the Facebook posting, I think it's a good start, but I think we can do a lot more. So that's our next step, is to look at how we communicate using some new technologies with our parent groups.
Director?
First of all, I agree with Superintendent Coombs, a great question. And the question I understand it to be policies in general.
Yes.
That the board puts out. How are they going to be proceduralized in the school, and how do we make sure they arrive at the right desk at the right time? We discussed at Strategic Council today, the principals and senior team that are out there, is that with this modern methodology of Facebook and all the different things that our principals are having thousands of things come at them in a week of they have to do this, they have to do this. And we have to find the right channel. And we don't have it right now because we discussed it today. The communications department with the principals and with the senior team have got to say, when a policy comes here, how do we make sure it gets to the desk and is flagged the right way to say, you have to operationalize this. So we're looking right now is creating a mechanism at the back of the room when our board passes a policy, the procedures created. How do we make sure that everyone knows and implements it effectively? Right now, the old way was very easy. A note came into the principal's desk, the director says this. And now with all of the emails and Facebook and all the different things, we have to get a way to say, this is critical, what are you doing about this, and how do we hold you accountable, and how do we hold ourselves accountable for the policy and the procedure at the right time? And I think that question itself deserves a significant answer from the senior team after we can give you a proper and comprehensive response. Today, I'd like to think that after we discussed it, that we will have principals getting us at the right time. But I think this will take a different flavor. I think it's going to take a different report. And I think it's probably going to come down perhaps in a channel differently that will be flagged differently, so principals say, gee, this is directly to do with my job. And right now, I'll let you know that a memo that would come out for me would go to the office administrator, would go to the assistant office administrator, the principal. We got to ensure that this arrives at the principal's desk and that she or he says, this has to be dealt with today. And so that's what we're taking this very seriously. So the discussion today was that we have really begun the discussion on to do this. And I'd like to think probably within another board meeting, another literally 2 weeks to 4 weeks, that we'll have a methodology that says this is how this will be done.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McCray?
Through you, Chair. David, you made mention that, this is a comprehensive list of, 5 or 6 different things that the Upper Canada School Board is doing, and you said there were other things as well, that this might, there might be other things. What are those other variables that you're talking about, other ways that we might ensure that this situation never happens again?
I think, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think the second recommendation, or the third recommendation, when it was talking about working closely with STAO, while STAO is a consortium which is arm's length, they transport our students. We are responsible for them from the moment they get on the bus to the moment we drop them off. And I think this will mean continued partnership with STAO to ensure that our messaging is getting through to all 33 operating contractors who STAO employs. And I'm also interested, I think as time goes on, I think we need to hear feedback from the schools to see how this is working and how this is being implemented. And I think that feedback loop will be really critical, because I don't pretend to say that we have this completely and totally figured out yet. I think we have to be open to respond as time goes forward, but I believe we're on a good track.
May I ask just one other question,
Go ahead,
Chair?
Trustee McCray.
Has it ever been a tradition of this board to do, like, in a situation such as this that occurred, and let's be very honest, we were so lucky in this situation that, I mean, it could have been so much worse, that our board ever considers doing a mock? Like, we write a policy, we develop procedures, we ever check it out? And I'm talking about a mock situation where we say, for an example, we have a little boy, he is 4 years old, and you give this situation to the school, and then you go back and you check through the school, so who did what, and you know, did the bus driver in fact that day check not that this situation really happens, but that we take our policy and our procedure out for a run, and we test it to see if it really does work. I'm just throwing that forward because
I'm going to go to Trustee McDonald. Just do you want to make a brief comment on?
Well, we're talking about one specific incident, and we're trying to lump in a lot of other things into it. So I think there's some information that we'll be able to share with you around the monitoring risk, which is what the board had a motion to go back to the audit committee and develop a plan on how we would monitor risk associated to our policy. So I'll have some information for you on that in item 7.03. That we can talk about that. It's not necessarily the exact detail that you're looking for, but it's the evolution of how we're going to get to that, hopefully at that point. So I think what occurred kind of spawned the need for us to identify other policies and how we would monitor those on a regular basis. So we'll have some information for you under 7.03.
Director?
Perhaps one of our trustees could answer even better than myself, but we do the mock things you described. In fact, our schools go through regular related activities for safety, like our shutdowns, our hold and secure, different natures that we take our kids before they start school on bus related activities and teach them how to move off and different things that happen. And our bus drivers that work for their operators and that work for Stay to us spend a great deal of time on safety procedures in this particular one. But I'm not so sure we've ever done the very mock situation that you've described. In fact, it may be something that I think that Ron at STAO may be involved in putting into part of our operations.
Trustee Swan?
Thank you for your chair. Thank you for your report, Superintendent Coombs. In regards to getting feedback from the schools, do we have a time frame for that?
Yes, Monday. Monday's the first time we're actually getting our principals together and vice principals. Part of the agenda is to discuss our safe arrival procedure and to get feedback on how the first 3 or 4 weeks have gone. Because we have had instances where schools have called the police, where they've had to go out and connect with parents, so we're looking for that feedback at that time.
Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
And supplemental here is, I know, for example, at KPS, they've strengthened their safe departure procedures. Are we also looking at this as kind of a tie-in off the safer arrival procedure?
Yes, it's part of the tracking, attendance tracking, I believe you're speaking, sorry, it's through you, Mr. Chair. The tracking in and out of the school. That's a very good point, because schools are very careful about when they release students, who they release students to, and that's a part of our ongoing attendance safety procedure. So yes, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm.
Trustee Buckland?
Thank you. Through the chairman, I wonder if you could comment on this specific instance. And I'm putting myself in the place of a 4-year-old, which could be quite a stretch. But the kid wakes up on the bus and is not sure where he is, so he's upset, traumatized, perhaps. Could you describe perhaps what was done to assist in alleviating that and getting them ready to go on the bus the next days or so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Buckland, are you speaking specifically to this incident,
Yes.
Caden Mayer? Oh, certainly. Yes, the parents, and you'll recall Jennifer and Kevin Mayer were here and spoke so eloquently about this. They worked very quickly to get Caden returning to normalcy. They wanted him riding the bus very soon, and of course gave him lots of support throughout. And I can say that the administration and staff at KPS did an exemplary job of connecting with the parents and watching Caden very closely over the next few days. I can tell you, by the way, I just spoke with Jennifer and Kevin a couple of days ago. Just gave them, they had draft copies of our protocols, and we included them in the process. And I can tell you that Caden is doing extremely well in senior kindergarten. He is thriving, and they are very grateful and supportive of these steps that we've taken.
Thank you.
Trustee McMillan? McPherson?
Oh, thank you. I'll bring a slightly different perspective to this conversation. Drivers receive a substantial document called Operations and Procedures. There's probably close to 10 to 12 pages in it. And it ranges from everything from respecting the board to dress code to certain procedures in emergency situations. We do mock-up exercises, mainly around bus evacuation. It is something that we never want to have to do in real life, but every year we do it. We do it right from the kindergarten through to the high school kids. And the rationale is we do it with our own students so that they are familiar with the operator if there is an emergency. The first week of school can be very confusing for everybody, and there's a great many things that happen behind the scenes that we don't see here. Somebody gets put in the wrong bus, and instantly your two-way radios are lighting up to get that child back on the right bus as quickly as possible to get a safe trip home. I think that, yes, I do agree with Ann that maybe what we need to do to make sure the system works is to do a mock-up exercise perhaps of what happens if a child is left in the bus. But I can just assure you there's a great many things when we consider the number of children that we transport. And this has been thus far an isolated incident, and I hope it'll never happen again.
Trustee McAllister?
My
No?
questions really have been answered
Okay.
by the group here. Thank you.
Okay, so Superintendent Coombs, you mentioned about the communication piece on the on ensuring that parents understood the expectations. I'm wondering whether we need to, at the same time of looking at that, also look at whether our systems are set up to make it easy for parents. Is there just one way? Are there, can they email? Do they know who to email? So I'm wondering whether we're gonna look at that. And if so, perhaps maybe that would be something that the trustees would like to see a follow-up on. See how this is moving through. I don't know, maybe the first you can talk about where you're going forward on this.
Yes, thank you. One of the recommendations, one of the changes we made to the procedure was that we expanded the use of electronic contact so that parents could choose. This policy was written in 2001 originally, and at that time we didn't have the sort of wide array of contacts. We have expanded the use of that parents could email information in, that they could text message. One of the things is the use of the family portal system will allow us to expand that contact so that they can choose how they wish to be contacted by us in an emergency, and expand how they communicate with us. But that will be something which, as we go forward, we're going to have to continue to review. I know that a lot of schools will have dedicated lines, for example, just for attendance. Other schools have an email system which they prefer to use. So one of the things that we're doing is reviewing how that input is taken in, not just how we're pushing out information. So yes, I guess the short answer would be yes, we could come back with an update on that.
Trustee McAllister?
David, this issue of communication is the critical piece, is it not? Communication, first of all, by the parent to the school, and then by the school back to the parent, etc. There are many links in this communication chain. For example, if I was a parent, I have to call the school. I know I'm going to be speaking to Mr. or Mrs. X. What if that person is ill or away for the day, etc.? I mean, how are we ensuring that this is not going to get lost?
Yeah.
And anyway, after you answer that, I have a secondary question.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. It's a great question. It was actually pointed out by some of the office administrators that we spoke with, that I know all my parents. I know the sound of their voice. What happens when I'm sick? What happens when I'm gone for training? And so their recommendation, and the recommendations of many of our administrators, was that our temporaries were apprised of our policies, that they were that we would be intentional in ensuring that those that we bring in a temporary basis were apprised of our policies and how important they were. And that will be an issue of follow-up for us. That actually was a point of vulnerability, but that was pointed out by office administrators and vice principals and principals. That was something that we are going to continue. That's on our topic for Monday, to ensure that those kind of cracks get filled.
Trustee McDonald?
Wait, you had
Oh, sorry. Trustee McAllister?
Second, I guess it's a request, Chair, through you. I'm wondering if we could have just a short, brief follow-up report within the next 2 or 3 weeks, so as to see how we are doing on this, because this is a very critical file.
Okay. Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. Chair Petersma raises a valid point, and I guess I really was slow to jump onto this. The report deals with the incident at Kempville School. The incident at Kempville School wasn't a lack of communication from the home to the school. It was a human error issue where someone failed to do something. In fact, a couple of people failed to do something. So I think it's important that we look at the root cause issue and resolve the root cause issue, as opposed to trying to say we're going to put measures in place so it's easier for parents to contact the school. I think it's important to do that. However, let's not get lost. The incident still would happen if the parent believes they have sent their child to school and there's no need for them to contact the school. What are we doing to ensure that happens? And I heard you talk about STIO saying cameras, and I represent this board on STIO, and I don't think cameras are the solution either. A camera does not validate whether that child got on the bus and that child got off the bus. The safety check does that to some degree. It does it so that the bus driver has to go to the back of the bus and click something and then walk forward. Doesn't mean they've validated every seat is empty. To me, when I go to the bank and I ask for money, the teller counts the money in front of me, and then she makes me sign a piece of paper to say, here's what I'm giving you. We need almost a sign-off, a check-off to say, I've got 20 kids getting on this bus, and now I'm delivering 20 kids to you at the school. Those are the issues that we need to make sure that we concentrate on. As far as the communication aspect is good. We need to look at all the different means available serving our community, serving our parents. We have to have it, make sure it falls in lines with the AODA. We have to have those communication aspects available. So if a parent is not able to talk on phone, how will they access the school? Those are the communication issues that we need to deal with. But if we make it, we try to solve a problem by putting the onus back onto somebody else, I don't know that we're going to solve many problems. Are we also ready internally to receive all of the calls that potentially we may have? Do we have systems in place to be able to say, as somebody has said, this secretary's off today, this principal's not there, we've got answering machines, everybody's doing other duties. Are we actually capable of responding to what we're asking the parents to do? And if we're not capable of responding, then we're putting something in place that really isn't going to help anyone. So we need to be careful on what we're asking, because we may get more than what we expect.
Okay, any other comments? Questions?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep, go ahead, Trustee Garrow.
I think through you, Chair. Thank you. I remember the parents coming to the meeting, and I'm glad, Superintendent Coombs, that you mentioned that you did speak to them. But listening to Trustee McDonald also brings into the fact that I believe that every avenue that he has suggested should be somehow communicated, and probably maybe a letter of gratitude back to the parents of the child, because when they came, they were very understanding, and I was amazed at them. So I just offer that as a suggestion of somehow continually keeping them into the loop. All these measures are good, and maybe it should be even given the child's name as these measures, and see what happens there. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Trustee McCray?
Through you, Chair. Another factor, and I think this is really important, and that is that we have to consider that this is the year that, we have full-day kindergarten in all of our schools. And so that's a big change in the landscape of our schools, 4 and 5-year-olds. And in my mind, I mean, we all know the development between a child that's 4 and 6, there are big jumps in terms of development. My concern as well is that when I look at the Educational Act and you look under compulsory attendance and all of the material, it's written as it pertains to a 6-year-old. We are still waiting for our ministry to develop the Day's Nursery Act. And I think what we need to keep in mind is that, there's a whole set of legislation that has to do with child care. And we're actually caring for children, 4 and 5-year-olds. These are very little people that parents are entrusting to us. So I think also our board needs to be pushing the Ontario Public School Board Association and our ministry. We need that Day's Nursery Act, because the two acts marry together to ensure the safety of our students.
All right, thank you, Trustee McCray. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent Coombs. Appreciate taking the time to update us on that. And we'll look for further updates as you get ready. Okay, I'll move on now to our next item, which is supporting the development of sustainable arts program. This is brought to the table by Trustee McAllister.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've been dealing with the arts and music in particular on various agendae for some time. And our focus on music and the arts is due in large part to the efforts of several dedicated community groups who have brought it to our attention. And I am pleased to note that one of those community groups, the Thousand Island Islanders, have stepped up to the plate and volunteered the financial and human resources of their members to assist in several of our local schools. And that represents a very small part of the work that they do, and for that the board is grateful. When we look back at our history, the board is committed to music to the point where we have allocated since the year 2003 $300,000 in each of those years for supporting an arts charter as part of the larger strategic plan. And since that dialogue was initiated, a review of the charter was conducted in 2012, and a status report was presented to the board. One of the recommendations one of the recommendations at that time was the proposal that the arts charter continue with its focus on three things. One was infrastructure, the second was student arts experiences, and the third was teaching and instruction. And though much progress has been made, I want to focus on the last recommendation, teaching and instruction. The delivery of music and the arts is based on the revised Ontario Curriculum Guidelines. And one of the observations of the Arts Charter Review pertained to the development of arts literacy, and I quote, "We do need to provide teachers with tools to work confidently with the languages of the arts to achieve the big picture of integrating the arts curriculum," end of quote. As trustees, we are stewards of the resources available to the board. Are we doing the best job possible in this area? Can we better use the available resources to improve the delivery of the arts curriculum in our schools? Consequently, Chair, this motion is asking the Director to take a long, hard look at the existing resources and the use of the annual $300,000 allocated in the budget to build teacher capacity, particularly in the K-6 grades. And the motion asks for a report by January 2014. So we're looking at three things, really: developing strategies, building teacher capacity, and you focus on our resources. So that's the intent of my motion, Chair, and I'm asking you, my colleagues, for your support, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that you put on the floor is be resolved, the director develops strategies using the $300,000 allocated by trustees to support the arts to build teacher capacity in the arts K-6 program with report back to committee of the whole in January 2014. Right? So moved by you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Carpenter. Okay. Anybody want to speak to this? Trustee McPherson.
I'm going to take two approaches first. First is kind of a question through the chair. Does this mean that the $300,000 will no longer be used to support acquisition of things as rudimentary as music stands, or enhancing programs with capital needs, or in some cases they are bringing in outside instructors to teach them how to do African drumming? Are we going to lose that as a result of this?
The intention, as I understand it, is that this is just a request for an alternative use of that $300,000.
In other words,
it comes back to us, we would then decide whether that was.
It will no longer be allocated to the schools on an application basis.
If we were to adopt this strategy, then that's what we would do. But right now, this is just asking for an alternative to that strategy that you're alluding.
And
the current use of the $300,000.
Okay, and my second comment is just thinking out loud. This partly came out of our discussion this month on the French immersion centers. And as I was driving home, I was thinking, why do we only offer French as a program-based enrollment? For instance, in my ward, we draw kids from all over my ward to go to one school for French immersion. And I got thinking, what would happen if we could put that kind of focus on the arts? That instead of just a French immersion school, we had an elementary school that was arts-centered. Is that feasible under the infrastructure? Like, we could go beyond that, and but just sticking to this conversation, could we not focus on the arts in one school and a family schools?
Okay, I think in fairness to the
No, I know, I'm
motion,
not
it's
dropping.
really
I'll
not
withdraw.
germane, but your first comments certainly, I think are, Trustee McCray.
Through you, Chair, to those who are listening in this evening, I think it's really important that we, highlight that there's, to date, as summarized below, that the Crew Arts Charter has overseen almost $900,000 of additional support in the arts.
And that's just in the last 3 years. It's probably close to over 3 million since
Yeah, well, I'm just
2003.
saying, so when they're hearing this number, 300,000, I mean, it's more than that.
Yep.
So I
Cumulatively.
think that's important that that's clarified.
Mhm.
And just to make a comment in regards to what Trustee McPherson said, I live in a community where, and I'm going to use the example of Mississippi Mills, where there's a very strong influence of the arts. And I'm going to tell you, whether or not the Upper Canada School Board decides or not that we're going to have arts within the Almont District High School, the community partnership will ensure that that happens. So, I think it takes more than a school to move in a particular direction and a board to move them there. I think it involves, a strong influence from community partners to make that happen. And as I just was explaining, your notion there, Trustee McPherson, regarding, having schools that there's a thrust for the arts or physical education, I think that's already happening in our communities. I know for sure in Ward 1.
Any more comments on this item, Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support Trustee McAllister's motion. When we initiated the 300,000 10 years ago, it was for music only. So we've expanded it beyond the music, so that has really changed the music focus somewhat. I'm recalling instances where there were excellent music programs, and then through seniority and mobility, the program was abandoned because there was no one left to teach it. So it would seem that if there were a central voice to this, it might be more beneficial. And as Trustee McCray has said, there are community groups out there ready to help out, and these could be motivated and encouraged. At least an evaluation of this as the director takes a look at it. So I'm looking forward to working on this. Thank you.
Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. I support this as well. I think, as Trustee Buckland said, it started out with the music and expanded to the arts. But one of the things that was, I think, imperative to what we were trying to achieve at the time when we talked about 300,000 back in the day, was that it was sustainable. And I think some of the monies have gone to schools that, if you buy instruments, it's not necessarily sustainable. The instrument may be, but the program isn't, because the people involved in the program at the time of the application end up moving. So I think, this motion really gets back to the sustainable aspect, to making sure that we're putting things in place that will have some longevity to it. So I support it.
Trustee Carpenter?
Just a comment that although I believe the $300,000 is probably not enough, but it's been an initiative set out by the trustees over the years, and I commend them for doing that. I support this because I find that there are some schools that take advantage of the $300,000, and there are some that don't. And I think if we have a look at it, we want to set up something that's much more equitable throughout the system for our elementary schools.
I think trustees that were around when the first when you first started, one of the themes was sustainability. You want to talk maybe a little bit about why that was seen as being important? Trustee
Further,
Buckland?
further to what I just said, or?
Well, I think it needs to be I think it needs to be reinforced. I just, like that's a main theme, to the original reason why we went down the path of putting this in place. And I don't, like you said, you've cited an example, but really that's where we want to go with this, right? Is to develop something that's sustainable, and at the teacher level, maybe developing teacher capacity seems to make the most sense. So I've said it. You don't need to.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
You weren't even here.
I wasn't even here. I think the model that maybe the trustees were trying to build on was the library model, and implementing that. And that, I think, has been very successful in creating sustainable resource centers, libraries, call them what you will, in our elementary schools, providing them with support. And I think that was a good model. Anyway. Trustee Bachman?
Just to add that it was really a crisis situation. We're living in the Harris years where they said you don't need music and you don't need woodworking and such things. And so the bottom had fallen out. And so we reached out and said, well, let's do something. And this was it. And, you recall the era of the traveling music teacher and so on. And great things were happening. And so I think we want to revise what we're doing and improve on it.
Maybe even put an inflationary increase. I mean, it hasn't kept pace with the increase in funding.
Once we settle negotiations.
Funding is up, the minister tells us 45%, so.
She's increased our expenses 55, but.
We digress.
Not germane. Okay. I have a motion on the floor, moved by trustee McAllister, seconded by trustee Karkner, that the director develop strategies using the $300,000 allocated by trustees to support the arts to build teacher capacity in the Arts K-6 program, with a report back to Committee of the Whole in January 2014. Is that enough time?
Yes.
Good. We should go ahead and vote, I guess. Just waiting on you, trustee McPherson. Not to put pressure on you or anything. Okay, that motion carries with all in favor except trustee McPherson. All right, thank you, trustee McAllister. Okay, we'll move on now to the accountability framework update, and working group, or the committee's chair, First Vice McMillan.
Okay, thank you. Co-chair Superintendent Coombs and I had our first Accountability Framework Committee meeting. I was very, very pleased with the positive atmosphere that was in the room. What we did is we took a step back, kind of take a look at where we've been. We took some time to clarify some key terms. The three key terms that we focused on were key performance indicators, key result indicators, which are of absolute importance to us as a board, and critical success factors. And it's the critical success factors that I just want to take a second and talk about, because I'd like to bring a motion forward tonight concerning those. If the trustees make reference to the appendix, where they can see that our strategic plan has 4 pillars for CREW, which is communication, resources, educational programs, and wellness. And what we had done is we had created a draft updated statement. And the draft updated statement for each of those 4 sections are what we are classifying at this point in time as the critical success factors that we'll be using as we move forward with the accountability framework. So what I'm asking the board tonight, and what I don't want to do is get into trying to fix the wording of it, because we want to just use it in its draft format so we can move the framework forward. There may be a time down the road when we want to sit down and look at the wording to make sure that the updated statements are accurately reflecting something that's measurable and addresses exactly what we want. But at this point in time of getting the framework committee off the ground, I think it's important that we get a motion where we take a look at these statements and accept them as kind of the working conditions that we work under. So the motion that I would be bringing forward would be that the Committee of the Whole recommend the Upper Canada District School Board adopt the critical success factors listed in Appendix A as a working draft. The final version to be presented prior to June 30th, 2014 for final approval. So these critical success factors, or these updated statements, will form the foundation of us moving forward in terms of what we want to accomplish.
So that's moved by Trustee McMillan, seconded by Trustee McDonald. Any comments, questions? Go ahead, Trustee McRae.
Through you, Chair. I was mostly, I have to say, I was most impressed by and I believe this is part of this, the introductory that was offered to staff today online for the wellness piece, inviting them to engage in the survey for wellness. And I just thought that, if that's any indication of what's to come, this is going to be a most worthwhile procedure that we're going to be going through, because if that's any indication, I thought that was done fabulously. I thought the approach was extremely welcoming. I showed it to other people and they said, well, I'd do that survey. I'd fill that survey out. So is that part of it? Is the wellness survey? That isn't part of this?
No, we can't take credit for that.
I'd like to.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, it fits into our wellness. That's what I thought that was part of that, because I thought we were going
Part
to
of the
survey our
wellness
students,
strategic
or survey
objectives
our,
that David's running.
Pardon?
It's part of the wellness strategic objectives that David is operating on in the strategic plan. It's not part of the accommodation review. The accountability framework.
I guess I was under the impression that one of the things under the accountability framework that we were going to look at was the wellness of our staff.
Culture of our.
Is that the culture?
Yeah, we're gonna do a culture survey or scan.
Okay, I'm confusing the two then. Okay, I thought that was part of it. Congratulations then, David, well done.
Trustee McAllister?
I think Trustee McRae, you raised a good point. It certainly is, wellness is an important factor in our strategic plan, but more importantly, it's one of the factors involved in looking at how successful the plan is and how it's operating. And we are looking at these statements that we have developed to complement the strategic plan, but to focus on ways in which we can measure each one of those critical success factors. So am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, we'll call a question then. Okay, it passes. All in favor? Thank you, Trustee McMillan, for bringing that report forward, and organizing the meetings with your partner, Superintendent Coombs. I now need a motion to move back into regular meeting. Moved by Trustee McMillan and Trustee Karkner. And record your vote. Okay, thank you, that passes. So now back in public session of the regular board meeting. We'll move on to the next item, which is a report from the Public Session Committee of the Whole, September 11, 2013. During that meeting, four discussion and presentation items were presented and no recommendations were brought forward to board. Any comments or questions? Okay, move on now to our next item, which is collective agreements. And Superintendent Patterson, the floor is yours. Do you want to just answer questions, or do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Chair Petersma, thank you. I'd like to just make a few very brief comments, and then I'm certainly open to answering questions from the trustees. The report is, in general, is quite self-explanatory. This evening, I come to you seeking a motion that attests to the fact that we have appended the Memorandum of Understanding to the collective agreements of our respective bargaining units in Upper Canada, of which there are 6, and recognizing the fact that once those MOUs are appended, they form part of the collective agreement. Your attachments include the local amendments, and all along I've been telling you that the local amendments are minor, and I think that perhaps you saw in the attachment that they certainly are minor. And in addition, you've got the specifics for each union in the Memorandum of Understanding. I would like to take the opportunity to emphasize that through the work of the negotiations between the ministry and the union, local school boards, and Upper Canada is not unique in this case, but there has been a tremendous amount of number of hours devoted to implementing the MOU terms. There's been tremendous hard work and good thinking on the part of a variety of departments, of course HR, both labor and operations, finance, IT, particularly in the finance world, payroll. They've worked very, very hard to try to interpret, to be nimble and change when we get new direction from our from the ministry, and it's been a quite challenging time in that regard. Specifically, I would like to acknowledge Nancy Barclay's leadership, Claude Clement from payroll, Jennifer McDonald, and Jane Smith as well. So just want to let folks know that we're working hard here in the administrative departments to get this work done.
All right, thank you very much, Superintendent Patterson. Any comments or questions? Trustee McDonald?
Just one question for Superintendent Patterson. Just in relation to the famous unpaid days, there seemed to be some confusion in the media about what was being done, or the necessity or the requirement to do those types of things. Can you help clarify that for me? I was a little confused when I read the article, and then all of a sudden I saw not really a retraction, but a correction perhaps. So.
Yes, through you, Chair. It was originally reported that the board was trying to convince teachers to take voluntary leave of absence days, which are essentially unpaid days. That is not our position. That is not our strategy. We want our teachers to be in their classrooms working with students. Yes, we did work with the local paper to make some corrections in that regard. Essentially, it is a requirement of the MOU that we facilitate that we post information about these days, and if teachers choose to apply for those days, there are again parameters that we need to adhere to before we would approve those days. And the whole intent of teachers taking those days is to offset the cost of the October PD day, but also the March 7th day, I believe, which was originally an unpaid, which is now an unpaid day, but if there are enough savings garnered could be a paid day.
So, and my concern with that is that it was covered locally. However, QMI agency, a news agency, picked that up, and the story was put out across, I'm not sure, across the Abort area or across the province. So I'm not quite certain that the correction was made for everyone else to see. And so that, you know, that's disheartening to see that the local media would pick up on something and perhaps correct it locally only. In any event, if we look at this, how is it being played out across the province? Is it happening across the province that teachers are suddenly saying, you know, please, I'd like to take a day off and don't pay me, so they can get paid later? If I don't get paid today, I will get paid later, but if I get paid today, I won't get paid later. They don't really, there's not many options, I guess, right?
No, through you, Chair, there is very little uptake for this initiative on the part of the teachers. We have had some applications, yes. We may receive more as time goes on, but at this point in time, there has not been significant interest in the VLAP program.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Trustee Carter.
So, through you, Chair, to Superintendent Patterson, do the days that they could ask for affect OSS, OTs, FO, and FOOTs, and PSSPs? Can all of those apply?
Yes, but when we're talking about OTs, we're talking about long-term occasional teachers, not daily occasional teachers. Okay. Also, CUPE also has that term in their MOU as well.
But further up, follow up?
Go ahead.
Further up on this chart, it says that PSPs, OSST, FOT, FOOTs, and CUPE, no unpaid days. On page, well, it's number 3, I believe. They've listed 2 days for the FO contract and OSS contract, but then down below it says no unpaid days. So how can we validate giving them a day if they request it without pay? I guess it's requested leave of absence.
Those days, there is a requirement in the OSSTF contracts and the ETFO contract and our PVP, although they don't have a contract, they have a terms and conditions where they are required to take an unpaid day. The unpaid day will assist in the movement of, in teachers moving on the grid halfway through the year on the 97th day. So essentially, the unpaid day basically pays for grid movement. That is not the same as the voluntary leave of absence program, which is an offsetting measure to assist in the possibility of the March unpaid day not being an unpaid day.
Any other questions? Comments? All right. So the ministry has not been interested in much of what we had to say until this month. And it appears that they only really want our input now, and have an expectation that we pass a motion that says that yes, in fact, we have attached the memorandums of understanding as if we had much choice to the appended respective collective agreements. 613-290-0698 is my cell phone, ministry, if you want to call me directly. So that's the motion that we've been asked to pass. And I need a mover and a seconder. Trustee McMillan. Help me out here, guys. We need to pass it. Trustee Richards, thank you. Any comments or questions? Trustee McMillan.
Just through you, Chair. I know all of us are sitting here uncomfortable with this decision. I don't see it as having any choice. We could send a message, but it certainly isn't going to solve anything. I think we've made our feelings very clear over the last year, and we've got our back against the wall. In this case, regardless of how we feel about the way things were dealt with, we have no choice in this situation.
And there is a bribe attached to it of $1 million?
Approximately.
So.
So I can give a million reasons why we say yes.
Did I say bribe?
I think it's encouragement.
Encouragement, sorry. You can replay the video to get the phone number. Maybe we can put it on the lower third. All right, I'm gonna call the question. Okay, we have most everybody. Can you just scroll up there for me, please? Most everybody's in favor, except Trustee McAllister and Trustee McPherson, and Trustee Swan abstains. So it passes. Thank you. We'll take the $1 million. Get your staplers out, Superintendent Patterson, and staple them. Okay. And thank you, Superintendent Patterson. We're going to suspend the regular updates on negotiations for what? 8 months, maybe 6 months. We'll have to start over again.
I may have some
Today?
information in the new year for you.
Oh, that long? Okay, good. So it's not that we don't like your reports. It's just we'll do without them for a while. So thank you very much, and your team and everybody else that worked hard. You know, inevitably in these things, there's always a point of conflict, and we can all look at that. However, a lot of people, all staff, unionized, non-unionized, worked very hard to get through this ridiculous situation created by the ministry. And I want to thank everybody for doing whatever it took to work through it, and hopefully our leaders learn from that and give us the space to do what is our job as the employer and negotiate collective bargain agreements with our locals and federations, unions, as we are legally supposed to do. All right, so we'll move on to the next item, which is already been referred to, titled Monitoring Risk, and it's a report coming from our audit committee, and are you chair of the audit committee? And the chair of the audit committee is here tonight with us to provide some details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I alluded to earlier, we have the report. I think if you recall, at the May 8th meeting, we discussed this issue as a result of a report by Superintendent Coombs. So the motion that was passed at the May 8th meeting indicated that the audit committee establish a plan to monitor high-risk policies and report back to the board no later than 6 months, or sorry, committee of the whole no later than 6 months. So I'm pleased to be presenting to you this evening our report and to show you the timeline that we're looking at as it relates to establishing our first draft at looking at the high-risk policies, and then coming back to you with a final, I guess, plan sometime in the spring. We're say indicating here by May. So when we met in September, staff had reviewed all of our policies. We have a number of policies within this board. Some policies are that we have to have them from a legislative standpoint, and some policies are there to provide direction to staff. So we had a matrix that showed all of our policies, and Nancy and her staff came up with two types of metrics to be able to measure the risk associated to those policies not being implemented or not being followed. Primarily, we're assessing the risk associated from a financial standpoint and from a reputational standpoint. Thank you. Reputational does encompass a little bit more than just a bad name for the board. Just as this incident in Kempville involved student safety, it had a reputational aspect to it as well. So student safety does come under the umbrella of reputational. It could come under the umbrella of financial as well. So those are the two primary areas that we were kind of looking at. So the two tools that we were looking at really were a little different than they were significantly enough the difference between the two of them to show us that the first tool that we would look at would be able to say, if we were to rank all of our policies and go through a process, we would have an understanding of what we believe would be the high risk policies. And then the second tool that was presented to us kind of was a little bit more detailed. It went into ask some more specific questions and dig into those items a little bit deeper. So the committee felt it was important for us to kind of have this in 3 phases and 3 steps. The first step, we would identify those risks using their first tool that would hopefully raise to the top some of those policies that are high risk. And of those policies that are high risk, do a deeper dive and look at those policies a little bit further. And once we do the deep dive into those policies, that's when step 3 would come in, and we would have an understanding of what the requirement is for us to be able to monitor that on a regular basis. For us to sit here and indicate what the plan would be to monitor that without knowing the areas that we would have to monitor. We don't know the work involved. We don't know the complexity of some of these things, and in fact, I think every time we try to do something, there's always a ripple effect. So it's a little bit longer than perhaps I first thought it might be, but it certainly makes sense when we start to look at the depth of the policies and the number of policies, the volume of policies that we do have. So we're presenting to you our interim plan to show you that we're anticipating that we'll identify those high-risk policies by November. Our November audit committee is in early November. Step 2 is we would then do that deep dive and come back to the audit committee with a more detailed matrix. And then by the May 14th meeting, I think we said in here, and sometime in the spring, we would come back to you with a full-fledged plan on how we would monitor, how we're recommending we monitor those high-risk policies. The important facet to this, though, is to make sure that it's not one individual responsible for reviewing the policies and identifying the risk associated to it, and doesn't fall within the ownership or the leadership of, I guess it does fall within the leadership potentially, but not the ownership for following through in this within the finance department, because a number of our policies are greater than financial risks. There's some human resources aspects, there's some aspects around the student safety pieces. So we've enlisted the encouragement and support of our director to make sure that we have a cross-functional team that we can review those policies and come up with the first draft, and then and do that deep dive sometime after November. So have the report before you, and if you have any questions for myself or the rest of the committee or Superintendent Barkley, I'd be happy to have those recommendations before you as well. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so I have the recommendation that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the audit committee's interim plan and the final plan, and that the final plan to be presented by the board by May 2014, moved by Trustee McDonald. Can I get a seconder, and then we'll go to questions? Trustee McAllister, thank you. So any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll just make the one comment. Thank you very much for taking this on. I know at the time it seemed like we were unsure where this needed to go. We knew we wanted to do it. I'm really glad that the audit committee picked it up from the vantage point of the parameters that already exist. And I think this is a good start. I really appreciate Nancy and David and the rest of the team's leadership on this.
Nancy's team did a lot of work to get this ready for us in September, so appreciative of that. Thank you.
Trustee McRae?
Through you, Chair, I think it's really important for the board to realize that, like, there's 78 policies, and then there's the procedures that go with those as well. So, just as Trustee McDonald has said, we needed, in order to do this effectively, we needed a cross section of staff and different members to sit on that committee in order to assist us in identifying what the high-risk policies might be. And I think the development of this matrix is, I've never seen a matrix such as this before, so, I think it's, my feeling is we're breaking ground in regards to doing this. And then step two, digging even deeper, which is more like a forensic, really, if you think of it, audit of those high-risk policies. And then, of course, the critical part being developing a plan to monitor those, to ensure that on a quarterly or regular basis that we are looking at situations and looking at those high-risk policies. And as the landscape of our board and our schools change, we're adjusting to those risks that may become available. So I think it's a good step.
All right, thank you. Trustee Swan?
Just a question. In step 1, 2, and 3 under the report to board, it says by identifying, utilizing the simple risk matrix tool sample 1. That's not attached. I'm just wondering, were we supposed to?
We can send that out to you. Yep.
And the detailed risk matrix sample 2 as well. That would be great.
Can you attach stuff? I guess it's not appropriate to do that. Put it in the library, maybe. So it'll be added to the library. Under board docs. That'll be public, right? So any member can see that. Okay, anything else? All right, do we have a motion? So, and cast your vote. Everybody in favor of that, thank you very much. That passes. Move on now to the next item, it's a notice of motion. Next meeting we will consider 2 possible revisions. One's to reflect the report adopted in May 22nd, 2013 that stated that the Accountability Framework Committee should be listed in the board bylaws. And another one, which is somebody thought it'd be a good idea for Lisa to get some training. And in her training, she discovered that there was an alternative read of portion of our parliamentary procedure, which is Sturgis. We don't use Robert's rules. And our board has always traditionally interpreted what it says is that any recorded vote included the vote of the chair. When we moved to every vote being recorded, we just went the next step, and the chair always votes in recorded votes. However, it is sufficiently ambivalent, and due to the fact that other rules of order are very strict in how their rules and how the chair should vote, we think it would be better and clearer if it stated explicitly in the bylaws the rules behind the chair voting. So that'll also be up for discussion at the next meeting. Okay, so that's the notice of motion. Report of the Special Education Advisory Committee, Trustee McAllister.
I wonder if Superintendent Edwards would like to make any comment first.
On the report, we had a fantastic, at our last SEAC meeting was our first SEAC of the season, of the year, so it was great to see everybody back, and we started off with a tremendous parent presentation on a reading program called Empower, and out of Rideau District High School, which we are also piloting in 15 of our boards, so it was a very good discussion and a very healthy discussion on what are we doing when kids can't read, and some follow-up on that. And if you haven't had a chance to watch also my superintendent's report, there's a really great clip of Jason Crozier from Carleton Place High School, who graduated last year. And if you have not had an opportunity to watch that, it's worth watching. Jason speaks clearly and so powerfully on the import of teachers, and the import of teachers not fearing technology and working with their students and working and talking and communicating with their students and learning the programs that the students need. He says so much in 4 minutes, and the communications department, my hats go off to them in terms of editing the video and getting it out. We've sent it right across our system to all our principals and vice principals, and hoping that they'll show them at their staff meeting. It is a very powerful video. So if you have a chance to see it, take a look at it and post it on your Facebooks and tweet it, because it speaks volumes. Trustee McAllister.
If I might just continue, Chair, I won't repeat anything that Superintendent Edwards said, but there was a motion that came out of SEAC that recommends that a progress report be made on the recommendations of the 2013 Spec Ed review, and that these be brought to SEAC by March 2014. I think if I could speak, I think I'm speaking for the committee. There is a trend and a feeling on the part of the members of the Spec Ed, Special Education Advisory Committee, that they assume more of an advisory role to the board, and we can't do that unless we communicate with the board. So I think you will be seeing more direct communication, either in person or by email, etc., from the chair of SEAC committee.
Good.
Have I missed anything, Bill and Susan?
Okay, are there any comments or questions? Yep, go ahead, Trustee McCray.
Through you, Chair, I just have to say that Ward 1 is extremely proud of Jason Crozier, and I have to agree with Superintendent Edwards. Watch that every trustee has to watch that video. He's just an absolutely incredible individual, and if you knew the struggles that young man has gone through since the time he was very young, and I've known Jason most of my life, like all of my life, and he is just an absolutely incredible individual, and now he's gone on to Ottawa University and on a full scholarship, so it's, I just have to say Ward 1 is very proud of him, and unbelievable story.
Thank you, Trustee McCray. Trustee McAllister?
Just an additional comment to Trustee McCray. I've watched the video, and it is truly inspiring, and I think it's something that not only every teacher, but every employee should take a look at, because he speaks from the heart and has a really, really powerful message. with regard to just one item I forgot, and it's mentioned here in the report, and that is we had a parent, Pamela Cairncross, who from South Crosby, well, from that area at least, and she has a child, 2 children, one in South Crosby and the other at Rideau. And she gave us a very interesting and powerful update on the difficulties that her son had with regard to dyslexia, and her initial disappointment with perhaps the way our board treated it, but that I think we come through since in spades. So it was very interesting for me to hear about that whole issue of dyslexia and the very chance occasion that she had to learn more about it, and she is becoming quite an expert on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much, Trustee McAllister and Superintendent Edwards, for your update, and Trustee McCray for your comments as well. Move on now to the next item. There's no report for this meeting for the Ontario Public School Board Association, so we'll move directly to the report of our student trustee.
Thank you, Chair.
Your maiden report.
Report. I'd just like to start briefly by saying thank you to everybody for the warm reception I've gotten here. It's nervousness is going away, so I'm starting to feel at home at the big board table. Can't wait for this my role to start this year and get started with Student Senate. It's going to be an exciting year for me. So just to inform everybody, Student Senate will be taking place on October 18th, December 6th, February 21st, and April 11th. And these days are all Fridays, so I'd just like to invite anyone who wants to attend. It's a very interesting meeting for the students and for trustees who've attended. It's a very energetic group and lots that the senators have to say. Just some of my goals for this year is to take the senators' wishes from last year and improve our communication. So they concluded that it'd be better to have more meetings throughout the year between the families of schools. So at Senate we have our families of school groups that discuss in small groups. They'd like to have more meetings and on top of the Senate meetings to discuss topics between their schools. So we'd like to work on creating that to improve communication, and also through social media such as Twitter accounts and Facebook pages. The senators seem to like to keep updated through things such as this, and pretty much look forward to another year of Senate, and I think it's an important part of our school system that we have it. And thanks everybody again for the welcome, and if any questions or concerns, please ask me, or feel free to ask.
Okay, any comments or questions for student trustee? Trustee Swan?
Is there a Upper Canada District School Board Student Senate Facebook page or presence or Twitter presence?
Yes, last year there was a Facebook page created by Sydney, so I plan to make another one or find from her how to moderate that or use the same one. And we didn't use Twitter last year, but I'd like to work on using it this year because students seem to be big on the social media. So.
Yep, go ahead, Trustee Swan.
When this is created, could we all be emailed? Like not the name?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an option that everybody could be informed on what's happening.
Thank you.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, I'm looking forward to the Student Senate. I always have a great time out there, and there's lots of trustees that join me, and we always have fun. I can't stress enough the importance of the student voice. I can't stress enough that the student senators see this as a year-long commitment. They take their role very seriously. But when I go back to the first statement about a student voice, it is so important that they represent all student voices. Often, the people who get elected to the Student Senate are on the in crowd and are usually pretty good students. And they represent a certain type of student, but we have all kinds of students in our system, and their voices are just as valuable, and I'm hoping in your role that you will see that happen.
Okay, trustee McAllister.
I just want to mention, Chair, that student trustee Tyler is going to be one of my 7 guests on the Upper Canada TV production on Monday evening.
Yeah,
I look forward to that.
I wasn't invited, but it's okay. I wasn't invited. Were you invited, Dave?
I wasn't.
Were you invited?
Was invited.
Oh. Mr. Harbers was invited.
We have Superintendent Cools, we have Principal Amanda Nyman, Principal Marshall.
Oh, well, you've got experts enough.
Yes, of course.
You don't need us. You know, one of the things as you, it's important to point out that the work that we do as trustees and as you do as a student trustee, a portion of it's done here. It's the most visible. It's what most people see. However, we know that much of your work is done day to day, and don't be intimidated by this table, because the most important work you do is what you do every day. So, thank you very much for your maiden presentation. We won't mark it.
It was an A+. Well done.
Director?
I would just like to thank Christy Rietsma, Vice Principal at South Grenville Secondary School. We had a wonderful 80s prom that was for the foundation, and well over $7,000 was raised for needy kids and to fight poverty in Eastern Ontario. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I was able to keep myself off of Facebook, I believe, with my costume. But the Cruisers, our group of singers and band and musicians who are principals and group that works, were outstanding, and the entire evening was fabulous. And it just sent a real strong message about how much we care. One, about having fun, but two, about that foundation, what it's doing for kids in Eastern Ontario.
Okay. I have nothing else to add, so we need a motion to adjourn. Trustee McMillan and Trustee Karkner. Go ahead and vote. All right, that passes. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Special meeting next week, right?